Hi, everyone. Today we're here with Paige White, who might be better known to others on social media as Paige Rene. She is a former North Carolina softball player who was also on staff at Arkansas, and she is now a mindset and growth coach, helping women navigate the transitions that life throws at them. From competing in the ACC to coaching through tools like the Enneagram, Paige has been on both sides of identity transformation. So I'm really excited to dive into her story and the work that she's doing now. So welcome, Paige.
Thanks, Jane. Let's go. So much to talk about on this.
Yeah, so I just wanted to start off talking about, your life as an athlete and what sort of drew you to softball and what was your experience like as a whole playing at North Carolina?
Wow. Okay, so where to start? First of all, I just loved competing. I got such a high from it. It was probably because I stand like 5'10", and I went to a school with like 144 people in a teeny tiny 5,000 people town at the coast of North Carolina. So I was like drastically bigger than most of the females that I was around. And so I just naturally found myself in athletics and played all the sports. And I truly think my parents really enjoyed watching softball most. And so I think they guided me or more into being serious about that sport. And they couldn't afford to send me to travel ball for more than one sport. So that's where I landed at with softball. And then when I was in high school, I grew up in North Carolina, and the biggest school I knew at the time was UNC. And there's a lot of really big programs in North Carolina now. And back then, that was the biggest one in my mind. So I just had tunnel vision and I had blinders, and I was like, I'm going to go play at North Carolina. And luckily that worked out. But I just didn't know anything beyond that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, obviously, right now in the softball world, like NC State is huge, Duke is huge. But I totally relate to that. Like, growing up as a child, you kind of have like your dream school that, you've kind of idolized those players growing up. I grew up in New York, in Westchester, New York. And so growing up, my dad would always take me to games at Iona College, which was like right down the street from my house. So I would like idolize those girls. And I ended up actually playing in the MAC conference. I got to play at Iona College, which is similar. It felt kind of good, being able to play on the same court that I grew up kind of idolizing. But it was so funny to me being in that position and then seeing, girls coming up to me after the game, like at either at Canisius or at Iona. But I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe like I was that little girl asking them like for a picture after the game. And I feel like so normal and such like a normal person. But yeah, definitely really cool experience. I'm sure to be able to play at a school that you kind of idolized growing up.
Absolutely. And recruiting's changed so much now that you can get a feel for a program on social media through camps. Really, all we had access to in was camps. And so camps and like the recruiting trail in the sport of softball, but like now you can look on social media, you can follow the individual players, you can really get a feel for the program. So recruits are so smart these days at figuring out, okay, where do I want to go and what kind of vibe do I want? And so I think it's incredible the way that the sports world and recruiting's grown.
Yeah, for sure. I've talked to a lot of people and I obviously have my own experience with this, but how did you feel your college career was in terms of, being career ready post softball? Like, did you feel like you had adequate resources when you were at North Carolina? Did you feel like you had a clear direction for where you wanted to go post graduation and when, softball was finally over?
That is such a brilliant question. And for you to be in your shoes and asking it for your audience, like this is so helpful. If only I had your podcast back then. Ooh, how do I answer this? I really, really enjoyed my academic experience at North Carolina. Like when when you think of a school like North Carolina, you typically think of academics, and I couldn't say enough about my professors. I was a journalism major. I was in the School of Journalism with some brilliant people who spent their summers in these like New York internships and doing really cool things because they had those resources in the School of Journalism. Me, I didn't necessarily have the financial means to go and do an internship like that in the summers. And I was playing ball. And I stayed in Chapel Hill most of the time. My parents were going through like a really rocky divorce back home. And so I was trying to figure out a way to make it happen while I was in Chapel Hill in between um, school years. And so I knew I liked to write. So like I look at my collegiate career as trying to put the pieces together and kind of follow those like nudges, right? So you clearly like to have conversations with people. So you're doing this podcast right now and you're learning a lot through that. I was the same way. I loved talking to people. I liked events. I was drawn to writing. I really liked sharing a story. And so I looked for opportunities to kind of follow those nudges. And one of them that I remember was my coach was trying to look for more creative ways to show recruits around campus. This is when social media was just first coming on the scene, not to like date myself, but I mean, we were restricted to the number of pictures we could put on Instagram, just to put it that way. So back then we had this like no this like garden gnome and this is funny, we called it Roman Gnomon, and he was like decked out in North Carolina gear. And so I took on this project where I would take him to different spots on campus and be like, Roman Nomen, this is the old well. This is what you do here. And so we would show that with recruits. And I just started logging away the things I enjoyed. And one of those was that. And I had to be really persistent in figuring out what I wanted because, as you know, journalism's really broad and communications is really broad. And so I was trying to figure it out like that. So, to answer your question, I think I had the resources available, and it was just about me being taking action, not thinking about what I wanted to do, but actually taking action and then learning from there. One example of that is I worked at a local radio station and I was an intern there and trying to see what the world of radio was like. Most things you figure out, or at least in my experience, was by process of elimination. I did not want to work in radio after that. And I was really thankful for that experience. And so what I had decided to do was take internships post college, and I was literally making no money. And so but I knew I needed experience, so my first internship was in Atlanta. It was with a company called Allied Integrated Marketing. I was a PR minor, and I took the job, and it was promoting movie releases for like Lionsgate and Paramount and different movie production companies. And so I was like literally sharing a room in a four-bedroom apartment with like one of my friends. We were sharing a bed for 3 months, and I was nannying on the side to be able to like eat and pay her like a fourth, an eighth of rent or whatever. And I was working for this production company and or this PR company because I'm minored in PR. And so I from there went to Charlotte, North Carolina and worked as an operations intern for the Belk Bowl. It's now the Duke Mayo Bowl. And I just like I did that for 5 months and really tried to get my feet wet and take action and just learn and just figure out, okay, is this where I want to be? Is this where I want to be? So I hope that answers your question in a
Yeah,
very
no, it did.
roundabout way.
No, it did. I think like something that I've really, when I was still in college and now that I'm post grad, and every time someone asks me, for if anyone ever asks me for my advice, I really, really, really try to emphasize the fact, especially if you're playing a mid-major sport and like I kind of sort of had desires going into college that I might want to play overseas after I was done, but I wasn't really sure, and that's not guaranteed, and you don't really know like where you're going to end up if you get an agent. It's like kind of shaky for women's basketball going overseas if you're not a high major player. So I really, really tried to take advantage. Thankful for my dad for, embedding this in me before I got to college, but really like tried to take advantage of all the opportunities I had to just enrich myself outside of basketball when I was in college. So, like when I was at Canisius, I interned within the athletic department, which was something that was so easy for me to do because I was in the building already. And I got to do communications and like graphic design and stuff like that. Was it necessarily what I wanted to do like for a job? No, but It gave me really good experience, and it was something that time wise, like they obviously worked within the athletic department, so they knew my schedule and they knew when I was going to be able to be there and when I was in practice, whatever. But it's something like as easy as that. And it's just, it comes down to time management and really, like you said, kind of finding these opportunities for yourself. Like
Hmm.
my coach was never going to be like, hey, Jane, like I really think that you should get an internship this summer, or I really think that you should start interning within the athletic department. Like they just want you to perform on the court. And obviously they care about your well-being and they obviously care about, your success off the court, but they're not going to tell you anything that's going to take away from the amount of time that you can put in extra work on the basketball court. Like if I'm going to be like running back and forth from my internship to practice, not super ideal from a coach's standpoint, but in my eyes, like that was kind of necessary to set myself up for success. And so I've heard and seen too many people, go through 4 years of playing a mid-major sport and then coming out with no internship experience. And it's like you have the opportunity right in front of you on campus, like you just kind of need to find it. So,
Yeah, Jane, you touched on two really, really, really important things that I think athletics really, really teaches you. One, you talk about what I call radical responsibility when I'm working with clients. And it's not that your coach doesn't care. It's not that my coach didn't care. I have a great relationship with my coach. She's in the Hall of Fame. She's retired now. But they have so much on their plate that their time is being pulled in a different direction, right? And so it's almost like they don't have the space and capacity to be thinking about the individual interest of every single player beyond what they do, right? And there's a lot of coaches with a lot of capacity who really give back. I've been around some really great leaders. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be able to advocate for what you want. And the more questions you can ask about, hey coach, I'm really interested in broadcasting, do you have any opportunities, or do you know anybody in your network that I can talk to, right? Or even with ChatGPT these days, like if you are a student athlete and you're listening to this, go over to ChatGPT and say like, hey, I'm a basketball player at Iona and I'm really interested in XYZ. What ways can I get experience maybe out in an internship, outside of an internship, right? And so you have to be willing to be curious, like you said. um, I said I had 2 points and I talked about radical responsibility. I'll just stick to that because I think what you said was so important. Like, you really have to take it's your career. Like, nobody is going to advocate for you like you. And so you have to recognize that early. And a lot of the work that I do with women now, I know we haven't like gotten to this, but is still learning to, I don't want to call it fight for yourself because it doesn't have to be, but learning to advocate for yourself, right? Stop waiting for somebody else to recognize your worth and start showing it more and start being more visible. Like, Coca-Cola doesn't just sit back and be like, we have a great product. They put it in your face every single
right.
day, everywhere you look. And the more visible you can be to decision makers, the better.
Right. I'll be the first to say it. Like when it came to basketball season and when it came to practices and games and, putting in extra work outside of practice, I was laser focused. And it's really, really, really hard to not just think about, your college career if you're an athlete as like you playing your sport.
Hmm.
But that's just, part of the reason why I feel like these conversations are super, super important because one, for your mental health, I think like it's super important just outside of career search and outside of everything else. It's super important to just have something outside of your sport that you're passionate about that like you can also
Yeah.
commit time to and, you know, work towards outside of your sport. But two, I think like it's like we said, like you have to sort of advocate for yourself throughout your career. And
Yeah.
it's like it's never too early. And I think when a lot of people start panicking once they are going into their senior season, being like, basketball season's over in March. So, like, if you wait for the entire basketball season to be over before you really start to think about what you want to do post grad, it kind of puts people in a panic. So, I think I was I'm grateful that, I had a lot of people that I spoke to that put me in a really good mindset and a good position where after my season was over, when it hit March, I wasn't in that same panic that a lot of people hit at that point. And I think, it comes with a little bit of yes, like the identity crisis of not playing your sport anymore still comes, but in terms of not knowing what you're going to do post grad, I think
Yeah.
it's something that I'm really grateful that I wasn't in that position. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that it's really helpful what you spoke about before.
Well, the other thing I'm now remembering that I wanted to say about what you said is this keeps coming back full circle all the time for me. I was ne like your sport will take you so far, and the resources by just being somebody in your sport that plays at a high level will take you so far if you continue to milk it. So I'll give you an example. The head football coach for the Carolina Panthers, when I was in college was Ron Rivera, and he was friends with our head coach. So he came out my senior year and threw the first pitch at, for like one of our senior games. And it was really cool. And I made it a point to go up to him and I was like, hey, I'm interested in working in sports. I like the city of Charlotte. Like, do you have any opportunities with the Panthers? And he was like, no, I don't have any opportunities with the Panthers, but you should look into the Charlotte Sports Foundation. So I emailed the Charlotte Sports Foundation with the subject line, like, Coach Ron Rivera sent me to the Charlotte Sports Foundation, right? And it was all from a connection of softball because he knew my head coach because of softball. And I was never one of those people that was like living and dying by my sport. Like there are certain people that just like live, eat, and breathe the sport. I knew I wasn't like that. I knew I wanted to do something different. But what I didn't know, Jane, was how much softball had given me and would continue to give me. It was like I was always trying to run from it because I was like, oh, I don't want to be known as like just softball. But from that experience, I then get the job at the University of Arkansas to be the director of operations. They didn't even have that role when I was in college. So I don't have to be a softball coach. I get to work in the SEC and I get to work for a softball program like Pinch Me. And
Right.
I just felt like it was a dream come true. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who would have thought I'm back here in softball? So then I'm doing that job and I'm building a business in the meantime. I know I'm skipping like lots of years and lots of steps, but now I go and deliver Enneagram mental edge performance workshops for softball programs.
Yeah, that's
And I mean, it's like just pay attention to the people in your sport and stay connected because it just keeps giving you so many gifts if you keep staying close and keep connecting to those people.
yeah, no, that's awesome. My teams throughout the years have done a lot of pretty, I'm sure like kind of similar to what you do, but we've done a lot of leadership workshops and stuff along those lines. And I think my coach at Canisius College was really, really, really placed a high emphasis on that. And we had a leadership coach come work with us, I think 2 or 3 times throughout my career there. And that was like one of all of our favorite, workshops that we had ever done as players. We talked about it like all the time after it was over. And yeah, I think those are just super, super impactful. So I think the work you're doing is great. And we'll get into that, I think, in a little bit. I know you said that softball wasn't like your entire life, but what was, the hardest part about walking away from your sport and like sort of transitioning out of being Paige, the softball player, into whatever was next for you?
I think it came down to the structure that softball provided and then having to find that on your own. So I'll specifically talk about it with like working out. I was probably way more athletic than I was good at softball, which is probably why I got recruited. Like I wasn't really that great at softball. I was just really athletic. And so I loved strength and conditioning. And I remember when I graduated, I moved back home and I just wanted to train a lot. Like I just loved it. But you come from a structured program where somebody's telling you what to do and you just go in, you show up and you do it and you take for granted how wonderful that is.
Yeah.
And then you get into get into it on your own and you're like, for God's sake, like how do I come up with these workouts? Like this is a
Yeah.
lot of work to like, and then I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna like try to replicate what I did in college without the same equipment and resources. So for me, I started getting probably like hyper focused on like my body image and what I was eating. And I think in a way, a lot of female athletes experience this because you're trying to maybe control what somebody else used to control, and you're trying to take on that for yourself and you're trying to figure it out. And it got to a point, like the whole reason I got into this like world of performance coaching for women is because I was so sick and tired of thinking about what I ate and if it was like a good day or a bad day based on what I ate or based on how I trained. And I ended up hiring a life coach who she was like friends with a volleyball player that I knew. And so I started following her on Facebook and I liked what she shared. And I was like, there's got to be more tools between my ears than what I'm like, got to be more ways to use these tools than what I'm using them for. So, two big pieces of how I came out of that was one, I discovered CrossFit and they basically like tell you what to do
Yeah.
every day and you get to compete. So drink that Kool-Aid, coach now. My husband competes competitively. We met in the gym.
Oh, wow.
And two, I hired a life coach and I took again like responsibility. I was like, okay, I'm tired of thinking this way about my body, about what I'm eating. Like it's just consuming too much of my thoughts. So I'm going to figure out how to figure that out, like what to do about it. And so those pieces really helped the transition.
Yeah, I think I totally feel the workout piece. Like I'm even when I was home, like when you're home for breaks and when you're home for the summer and stuff, like you get sent a workout packet and
Yes.
whatever. And so up until probably a couple weeks ago, like I still have the app on my phone. So like when I would go to the gym, I would open up my workout packet from, this past year and I'd go into the app and I'd just do the basketball summer workout for Tuesday, June 27th or whatever it is. And then a couple weeks ago, I went in and I was like, okay, let me just try to do my own lift. I don't need to do like a plyometric basketball workout today. And I just didn't, you don't really even know how to make a lift program. I'm like, do I do upper body? Do I do lower body? Like, I'm
Yeah.
not used to having this much freedom in terms of a lift. So that's like a funny thing for me. But yeah, I totally understand like that identity crisis, especially in the gym
Yeah. And
aspect.
especially if you're like, I mean, this is a little plug for CrossFit, but like you're just in a mindset where like your performance and your competition is like what you're used to. So when I got into CrossFit, I was like, wow, okay, I can compete with myself. I put in a score every day. In softball, it's like, okay, well, like, how did I do in this hitting drill? And so it
Yeah,
like just really translated. And then somebody else was telling me what to do. So I didn't have to worry about it. And
right.
so it was so helpful for me. But I have teammates, like I don't have maybe any teammates that do CrossFit because like everybody thinks like we're crazy and in a cult, and we probably are, but th they typically go in one of two directions. It's like, oh, I never want to step foot in a gym again because like I was forced to do this all my life, or oh, I really like this. I'd like to figure out my version of it.
Right. No, yeah, that's super interesting. I think if you're in that sort of mindset that we're both in, I think like CrossFit or like any sort of workout class is definitely your friend. I definitely prefer those at the moment over just going to the gym and figuring it out on my own. A lot easier. Um, how did you, I know you touched on this a little bit, but what sort of inspired you to become sort of this mindset and personal development coach? Like what sort of sparked that interest? Was it from meeting with your life coach that sort of came about in your head? Like, this is what I want to do now?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions to answer. It was it was like three serendipitous moments that were all happening around the same time. So one, I had hired that life coach, like I was telling you, and I was paying like $500 a month and putting it on a credit card because I really couldn't afford that. And I was learning tools for myself. I didn't know entrepreneurs. I didn't like know anything about business. I always felt like I was bad at money. I'm still working on that. And so like I hired her and was truly doing it for myself. And then we did this like VIP retreat weekend with like all of her clients, and we went to this Airbnb in St. Louis, and we're all sitting in the living room. It's probably like 12 women and she's at the front of the room, in front of the fireplace. And I just feel like her and I were having this back and forth dialogue. Like it was just like we were the only two people in the room. And I don't even know what we were talking about. But afterwards, there were some women that came up to me that were like, like, can you tell us about your business? Like, what do you do? And I was like, me, like, I'm just trying to figure my life out, and it really planted a seed though, where I feel like they saw me in that position. And so I started to see myself there. So that was thing one. Thing two was I was sitting in the softball offices. And I remember, I supported the head coach, assistant coach, and they were all in their offices. This is when I was at Arkansas as the director of operations. And they are literally talking about a double play in the game the night before for like 45 minutes and like going on and on and on. And I'm sitting there in my office and I want to roll my eyes and I'm like, this is just absurd. And then in the next moment, I thought, you know what? Stop being a brat. If you could think about something over and over and talk about it for 45 minutes or for the rest of your life, what would it be? And so I started really like wrestling with that question. And the third part of it was I was getting my master's because Arkansas at the time, if you were a full-time employee, was giving you 90% off tuition.
Oh,
If you're
wow.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't going to get my master's, but might as well.
Yeah.
And so, it was like recreation and sport management. And we had to write a paper on basically like anything that we wanted. And I started thinking like it was going to be health related. And then I'm reading all these research papers on lab rats and sugar. And I'm like, okay, the only science I took in college as a journalism major was astronomy. So I don't know what any of this means. And so I go into my professor and I'm so upset. I'm like in tears. And I'm like, I don't know how to write this paper on sugar and lab rats. I didn't even take chemistry and biology. And he's like, okay, well, tell me what you're interested in. And I started explaining it to him, and he's like, I think you're talking about like human behavior and cognitive behavioral therapy. And I was like, you're right. And so, but I didn't know what it was. And so I started, it was really those three moments that were the catalyst to say, you know what? Like this field of helping women get from point A to point B and truly go for what they want and break down the how, I think that's what I'm meant to do. And so that's how it got started.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Like, I think that, like you said, that moment of like sitting in your coach's office, that's such a good mindset to have, like, in order to find, what you're passionate about. Like, if you had to talk about something for 45 minutes, what would it be? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really actually good way to think about it. And I know that obviously it didn't come like naturally, it sparked from a conversation, but I think that that is something that you could ask someone if they're, looking to figure out, what they're passionate about or what they want to do moving forward.
I
Um,
might actually ask that on my Instagram story right after this and just see what people say.
yeah, that's actually really interesting. I would have to think about what mine would be.
Mhm.
What are some tools? I know that from your page that you use the Enneagram test, but what are some other tools that you use with your clients, either like person one-on-one clients or like with softball or athletic teams that you work with?
We do a lot of what I call forward momentum. So if people are not familiar with coaching, like performance coaching, leadership coaching, and a lot of people are like, what's the difference between therapy? One, I'm not licensed to like diagnose you with anything like anxiety or anything like that. We don't do a ton of looking into your past. We really create what I call new pathways of thinking for forward momentum. And so, one of my favorite things to do is to help you create the version of your highest self, is what I call it. And so, typically, what I'll do, I can actually take you through it, a very brief version, but do you have somebody like, let's say that you look up to that you think, wow, they are goals, they are a leader, they are everything I aspire to be. I really like how they carry themselves. Is there someone that comes to mind for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think about this person, give me two words you would describe them.
Um, Confident
Okay.
and disciplined.
Ooh, okay. So what is the behavior that you see that makes you say they're confident?
That's a tough one. Usually they're like pretty outspoken on like what they're, passionate about or what they feel, is right or needs to be said. Um,
A great one.
like their presence in a room is like felt, not in like an overwhelming way, but you know that they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Those
think
those are
yeah,
perfect. What behavior do they demonstrate or that you've perceived makes you say that they're disciplined?
probably just like I mean, I time management for sure, and just like being able to balance their time in a lot of different buckets and still, equally pouring into all of them. I think that that's something that I'm still trying to balance and still trying to figure out how to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's definitely like the aspect that I am aiming for. So,
Yeah. I mean, they sound awesome. So, step one of highest self is identifying somebody that you really look up to because it's easier to draw from examples in your outside world than just coming up with a blank slate. So, we
mhm,
identified that person. And then I asked you characteristics. Typically, we'll go five, but in essence of time and
yeah.
keeping the listeners engaged, we said two. And you said confident and discipline. And then I asked you to just describe behaviors. That's step three. So you're telling me this person is confident because they take up space in a room. You can feel their presence. They're outspoken about things that they believe in. And you said they're disciplined mostly with their time management and seemingly what I would guess being able to manage a lot of projects and a lot of relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
Then I ask if you had to describe yourself as confident and disciplined, what would you say you bring to the table? What would somebody else notice in you that would make them say Jane is confident?
I think that I think basketball and like being an upperclassman and, I played basketball for 6 years, and I think, having my fifth and sixth year of eligibility kind of helped me be a little more outspoken and feel that I was able to, say what I wanted to say, like on the basketball court. And I think that that has carried over off the court. So I feel like I'm getting better at being more outspoken and being, um, I guess, more feeling like I can speak in a room. I think like in a new job, I feel like that's a difficult thing to adjust to as well, being new in your role. So I think that's definitely something that I'm working towards and getting better at. But um, yeah, for right now, I think working towards being more confident.
Or hello, having your own podcast, like somebody might look at that and be like, wow,
Right.
that's courageous, right? So there's a couple things there. What if somebody said Jane's really disciplined? Why might they say that?
I think that when I have something that I'm passionate about and that I'm like motivated to do, I'm really, really disciplined. Like this podcast is something that I've really dedicated a lot of time and effort to that I have been really disciplined towards. And like basketball, my whole life has been something that I'm really disciplined towards. And my job, I think like I'm really disciplined towards when I have a priority or something is like on my plate, I'm gonna make sure I give my 100%. But I think sometimes I spread myself too thin. So the things that I want to put in 100% effort to, I make sure I do. But um, I definitely need to work on like not over
Extending.
committing to things and
Yeah.
like that. So
So that's the next step is really identifying where you're at. And typically, like I said, we would have five descriptors. What I would then ask you to do if we were working together would be to make sure you want to keep the same five. You described your person you look up to, which is typically what people will do. They'll because you see the things that you appreciate in other people. But like if somebody else was looking at that person you're referencing, they might say other things. So we take those five descriptors, and you have examples now how you demonstrate those, how other people might see you as confident, as disciplined. So the next step would be taking those five descriptors, so confidence, discipline, and whatever other three you shared, and I would ask you, how would you describe Jane 5 years from now, confidence? How would somebody describe her then? How would they describe her as disciplined then? Right? So you start to build this picture for that version of yourself. And you can use any time frame. It can be a
yeah,
year, it can be 3 years, it can be 5 years. And then this could be a little corny, but I've done it with clients like as young as 15 and as old as 55. Not that that's old, but I'm just giving you the range. And I ask, if you had to name her the highest version of yourself, what would you name her? And this came from a very annoying story where when I first started business, this was like very early on, I'm sharing things on my Instagram. Somebody like DM'd my best friend and was like, is Paige having is she okay? But really, I was just sharing like what more was on my mind and kind of introducing a new version of myself to the public. Well, one of my friends was kind of joking around and like kind of making fun of me, but like kind of not. And she'd be like, what's Boss Lady Paige up to today? Like, what's Boss Lady Paige? And I'm like, this is so cringy. But I found myself thinking, and I used an acronym and I said BLP. I was like, what would BLP do like in this situation? And I specifically remember when I first got this job, I was young. I was like not much older than the softball players at Arkansas. I say this job because I still live in Arkansas, no longer with the program. But when I first got that position, I was like going out a lot on the weekends. I was in a new place and I was playing a lot of league sports. And then I thought, BLP would probably be spending a little more time doing things related to business and building business. And so it was really a great way for me to anchor into who I was becoming. And so that's what I call highest self. And I do that a lot with individuals and teams.
Yeah, that's a really awesome exercise. I think that's something that is really useful for me. I'm definitely going to take that and use it. And I think I can definitely see how that would be really helpful for sports teams specifically, like kind of seeing yourself outside of your sport and like as a person. Because I think that that's something that people, myself included, definitely had a really hard time doing. And it's really difficult when you're so just like engulfed in your sport in the depth of like the season.
Yeah.
That's a really good mindset to have once completing that exercise. What kind of, I know you talked about, sort of rebranding yourself on social media. Like, what was that process sort of like? Like, how did you go about sort of this rebrand and like launching your own brand?
In the very beginning, I probably had some coaching around this with my life coach at the time. She like went from like nutrition coach to like life coach to business coach. And I think she's still doing it. She played volleyball at Louisville. Um, But I'm pretty sure she was the one that was like encouraging me being like, visible on social media. And I didn't mind that truly. But I will say it is probably when I've helped women build brands online, them being visible on social media is terrifying for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think it stems back to like, high school. Like people maybe made fun of you because I've had a client that was like, I was kind of overweight in high school and people make fun of me and I'm scared to show my face. And so I I had to continually wrap my mind around, well, if this helps if five people make fun of me, but this really truly helps one person in the way that it's really helped me and impacted me in my life, is it worth it? I would ask myself that question, be like, yeah, it's worth it. I'm going to share. And so I just started sharing what was on my heart. And the way I did it was I wrote 5 pillars of things that I really cared about. One of which, just to give you an example, was I remember hearing a lot of like, oh, I don't have time for XYZ. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And it really pissed me off because I was like, that's not true. Like, it's made up. And so you should own your time in a better way. You talked about being disciplined with your time. And so one of the things I would talk about is to reframe your language. I was a journalism major, right? So I give a lot of weight to words. And so instead of saying like, I don't have time, I would encourage people to say I didn't make time. So if you and I were working on a project together and, crap hit the fan, instead of you saying like, oh, I didn't have time, I would call you out and I'd be like, well, did you not have time or did you not make time? And so really what I was doing, sharing that was trying to empower people. Like, let's just take back our language and let's just say, let's call a spade a spade. I didn't make the time. And it's not getting onto you. It's not like being upset with you, but it's allowing you to be more, um, just taking your power back with the time you do have. Like I chose to do this. Your time, if you look at your calendar, is reflective of what you care about, of your priorities. So let's say that. Let's talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with your calendar is reflective of your priorities completely. That's super, super, super important. I think definitely once you have the ability and you're post playing your sport and you have the ability to sort of make your own calendar and make your own schedule, it's really can be really overwhelming. There's people on both ends of the spectrum that sort of might overcommit. Like I myself, like I feel like I get myself booked and busy, and then I remember like I need to make time for my family, important friends. I can't just be so hyper focused on work, working out, and doing this podcast. Like there's other things to life. So I really think it's important to, not lose sight of things that are important and remember that like your calendar, like you said, is a reflection of your priorities.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I also the social media thing and being like afraid to put yourself out there. I've kind of experienced that. I felt, a little hesitant. Obviously, I feel like everyone does sort of first posting this podcast. Like I made it was on its own Instagram handle, but I started posting it on my personal Instagram account. And
Mhm.
granted, a lot of my followers are like women's basketball players just because that's sort of the people that I grew up with. So a lot of, I mean, everyone that I know of or that they've told me has been really receptive of it. But, obviously there's going to be people that, might talk negatively about it, or there's going to be people that have
Sure.
a different opinion. But like you said, if it helps one person, I feel like, and you're passionate about it, then why not? I
Yeah,
feel,
and
yeah,
yeah,
social
and you
media
like
is such a open place now. I feel like anyone can kind of just post what they want. And at this point and at this age too, like we're not in high school anymore, we're not in middle school. You really can just, I don't, you really have to just get over the being afraid of posting because people are going to make fun of you.
Yeah, or just like work to reframe it. Like that's a lot of the work I do is help people reframe their thoughts and their language in a way that supports their growth, not hinders it. And so, like you touched on a huge piece. People are going to judge you no matter what. They're going to judge you if you do it, they're going to judge you if you don't. So, like for me, now I truly don't care because now I'm like, well, I can make money whenever I want. So why
Right.
wouldn't I use this resource to like make money? And so it's like, and not that every like direct sale comes from social media, but you start to build a brand, you start to build a voice, you start to be known for something. And I actually think like no matter if you're on a team in college or if you're in working for a business, within the confines of like respecting who you report to, you should build your own individual brand. Like you should be known for something because I was just on Walmart's campus today. Walmart has a campus similar to Google here in like Bentonville, Arkansas. It's massive. They're the number one retailer in the world. And if you're somebody that works for Walmart and you want to advance, shouldn't you be known as somebody that has like creative problem solving? Shouldn't you talk about that on LinkedIn or talk about that on your social media? Because then you build a brand within a brand,
Right.
and that's important.
Yeah, there's too many people that are skilled and too many people that are qualified, too many people that, could do the job. I think, yes, like doing something to differentiate yourself, whether it's, building your brand, whether it's, getting if building your brand is not something that you want to do, if it's, gaining skills, like I do data analytics. Like so if I wasn't, doing this podcast and I wasn't active on social media and stuff, maybe something that I could do or something that I could additionally do is go on LinkedIn and do some LinkedIn courses to, advance my skills and to get some more certificates and just do more to differentiate yourself because aside from building your brand, like there's just so many being this circles back to, why I kind of started this podcast. Just sort of being a former athlete is not enough alone to just get a job. Like, yes, it helps you and yes, it propels you forward, but it's not just going to get you a job without you doing anything else to differentiate yourself aside from that.
Yeah, agreed.
So my last question for you. So at the end of my first season was last year, and I was going into my final year of playing college basketball. So at the end of every episode last year, I would ask all of my guests for one piece of advice that they would give to college athletes that are going into their final year of their sport, kind of starting their career search. But Right now, given like my position in life and now that I'm done playing, I wanted to ask my guests this season, looking back at your first year out of sports, what's something that you wish someone has told you, or that you, what's something that you wish someone had told you, or that you had truly understood about life after your sport was over, whether it's like career wise, personal wise, anything along those lines?
That's a fantastic question. Get a coach, get a therapist, get a mentor ASAP. Um, because there's a public figure named Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he says that our negative thoughts are like weeds. They grow automatically. And so our job is to continually introduce our minds to new and updated information. And he calls those seeds, and like to continually plant seeds. And I know I'm biased because I have coaches. I've hired tons of coaches out inside, outside of athletics, and I am one myself. But you just don't get that rapid growth without one. And it quite literally saved my life. And so I know that sounds dramatic, but um, your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings lead to your actions. And it is just like the motor for your life. And so I can't, like, you would never play basketball without a coach. I would have never gotten to college without a coach, right? And so people enter the world outside of athletics and you just think that you should be able to figure it all out. And I hear that from women a lot who are like hesitant to hire somebody like me. It's like, oh, I should know what to do. It's like, you can make your life a little easier and get there a little quicker
Yeah.
if you learn to lean on people. So I would say hire a coach.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation and getting to know you and your story a little better. And I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if anybody wants to connect or has any questions about anything that we had conversations with, you can find me on Instagram, Paige, Paige _ Rene, Rene 15.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.